Greetings, metaphysicians. This is episode 116, Obstacles to Enlightenment, Part 2. That's right. I didn't plan for it to be part 2, but here it is. More is dropping in to share around why we are not enlightened and ascended already. Please listen in and enjoy the episode.
You are listening to Let's Get Metaphysical. This podcast explores the spiritual and metaphysical world through the experiences and opinions of the host and those interviewed. It should not necessarily be seen as direct endorsement or personal advice to our listeners. We encourage you to use your own discernment, judgment, and intuition regarding anything you learn from this show.
Let's get meta.
Welcome to the Let's Get Metaphysical podcast. I'm your host, Renata Maniaci, here to remind you that you are a spiritual being having a temporary human experience here on lovely planet Earth. That's right, you are a beautiful, shiny soul that decided to plop down on Earth and put on a human suit for a temporary amount of time. Make the most of it. This is season 7, Heaven on Earth, and this is episode 116, Obstacles to Enlightenment, Part 2. And that's what came through today. Interestingly, wasn't necessarily planning on having this be a 2-part episode, but it came through. And so without further ado, let's just jump right into it, and we'll see what comes through. Are you ready? Let's get meta. Masters and angels, I request your presence, assistance, guidance, and support with this episode. I invoke the light of the divine within me. I am a clear and perfect channel. Light is my guide. Highest possible good, and only good is allowed. Please let me know the truth, speak the truth, become the truth, and be the truth. And let this episode reach whoever needs to hear it. Thank you with gratitude and full faith. Bless creation. This is looking like and feeling like it's going to be a continuation of the previous episode, Obstacles to Enlightenment. I am all jacked up right now after having attended an event from my spiritual teacher, John Douglas. And it's not like it's the first time that I've heard some of the things that he had to say, or at least some of the big concepts. And what I'm getting at is there are so many things that we just don't know exist that are impeding us or barriers for us or holding us back, or things that we would never conceptualize or have any idea are holding up our evolution for various, often karmic reasons. Let me go into this a little bit more. There's a whole seen world, right? It's everything that we see, everything we experience, we know, we interact with every day. That's the seen world, right? That's the world we understand. And then there's the whole unseen world, the whole invisible world. And we've talked about this at length in various episodes here. This whole podcast is talking about the unseen world, basically. When I'm making my prayer at the beginning of the episode, I'm praying to unseen angels and ascended masters. So the idea, if you're listening to this podcast, that there is an unseen world, or the unseen in general, that interacts with the seen world, that's not a new concept for any of you. And we've talked about angels, we've talked about guides, ascended masters, God, extraterrestrials, different dimensions, different timelines, all kinds of things that are unseen to the vast majority of humans on this level, but we're finding out are no less real than our lived and perceived reality that we're in, right? So we have the seen, we understand that to some extent. We have the unseen. That's what we talk about on this podcast. Now, what's flooring me right now is just the extent to which there are these unseen barriers or obstacles to we could just say enlightenment, but even to advancement, to evolution, to learning our lessons, to growth, to overcoming something, to really truly experiencing something. And just to make this a little bit more tangible, how about fully experiencing love? Okay. I have known from a fairly young age that in this lifetime up to now, I could not experience the same capacity to love as other people around me. That became very apparent to me. It's not that I don't love. It's not that I'm not loving. It's not that I don't love people. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the experience of love, of having and feeling love. And that became very apparent to me in one of my relationships because that person was so incredibly loving. I did not understand how they could be like that because I could not be like that. And there was just a very big, it's not that I didn't love this person. I love them very much, but the depth and the feeling with which I could love them back was not matched with the depth of how they were loving me and loved everything and anything in general. And I was astounded by that. So this is an example of just a basic difference. We all have these differences, and I just use love as an example that popped into my head. It could be anything, right? Some people grasp intellectual concepts more easily than others. They don't have a barrier to understanding high-level concepts, maybe in science, math, whatever. And other people, it is harder for them to grasp those concepts, okay? So I'm just laying out a few more tangible examples of what I'm going to be getting at here more metaphysically and more having to do with spirituality and evolution, okay? So we have these very real, tangible examples of just some people can do a thing better than others, and some people have barriers to doing the same thing. Okay, cool. Same thing in evolution. Same thing on your road to higher levels of consciousness. Same thing on the path to ascension. And my teacher has pointed out on several occasions different things, obstacles, barriers that we have no idea even exist because that's the nature of the unseen or invisible realms and worlds. First of all, we have the issue number one is we don't see it, the unseen in general anyway. Issue number two in this particular case is something like, let's say, barriers to meditating, or to be more clear, barriers to accessing the process that happens within your mind during meditation, okay? Do you get where I'm coming from here? Like a similar way to say that could be, or a similar example would be, some people have a heart arrhythmia and their heart is not functioning correctly, right? This would be akin to that, only for your pineal gland, or for the mechanisms, many of which are in your energetic field that we know almost nothing about in the broad scheme of things, in the grand scheme of things. Barriers to that function working properly. So every once in a while at these events, this information comes to light about things that totally make sense to why we'll say I have not experienced the full depth and breadth of something, whether it's love, whether it's a process that I'm listening to, whether it is obstacles to literally blessings that angels or higher level beings are trying to send my way, but having some kind of structures or obstacles that block those from sticking to me and you, right? This is for everybody. And this is an interesting thing to talk about because there's only, in my experience, so many ways for these things to be removed. You might have the authority and the grace to ask your guides to remove any and all obstacles to whatever, XYZ, to loving, to getting the most out of meditation, to grasping the full depths of a process that you're listening to anything, right? You might have that dispensation to ask for that. But in many cases, what I am learning and understanding is sometimes you need a being, a special being, to help you with that. Now, we've had special beings on this planet throughout time that help us with these things, and they have been called many things. Many things. Gurus, saints, saviors, teachers, masters, okay? Different cultures on the planet use different words and in different languages. So this concept of these kind of blessings and gifts coming through a physical being who incarnated that happens to have the right and the gift to be able to mitigate these blockages, these obstacles for you, this is not a new concept. Throughout time, this planet has been graced with the presence of these different benevolent beings who incarnate into human bodies and perform certain benevolent tasks and blessings for us. Now, I can name some of these, and there's no way I could possibly name all of them. I don't know all of them, but ones that we have heard of certainly are Buddha, Jesus, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, several of the saints in Catholicism, various gods in Hinduism, whether you're talking about Krishna or Vishnu, Lakshmi, Durga, and then there's more recent beings such as various Indian swamis and Mother Mira and maybe Sai Ma and Anandamayi Ma and other people that you may be thinking of right now. And I don't know the truth of all of these different beings' divinity unless I meditated on it and looked into that. But suffice it to say for now that there are these special beings that incarnate on the planet that have this dispensation to help remove obstacles for us, to bless us and mitigate the karma that we are carrying that allows these obstacles to stay in place, these barriers, so that we have to, on some level, suffer through them to get further along in our evolution. This is this feels, maybe it's not, maybe you're totally getting all of this. It feels kind of high level topic today, but that's what's coming through. And my mind is just kind of blown right now because there are maybe an untold number of things that we are not aware of and may never become aware of that are blocking us from certain levels of evolution. Because they're supposed to, right? Because of our karma, because of our situation, because we don't deserve to have it mitigated yet, because we have to suffer in this particular way a little bit longer before we can reach that level of consciousness. All of these things, all of those things are true. And the big picture, it's not like there's anything wrong with that. It's just rather mind-blowing to me that those barriers exist without us having any idea that that's a thing. So where is this coming from? One of the things I believe I can share that I experienced this evening was a revelation that many of the people who were listening into this event had barriers to the propagation of some of these angelic reformation processes that many in my circle listen to. So I've talked about this before. I've played them before. I'm playing one right now in the background. And these are what can be described as pressing play. And when you press play, angels, real live angels, arrive to help you in certain areas, depending on what the process is for, whether it's relationship development, health repair, subconscious repair, emotional repair, psychological repair, all these things that I've talked about on and off on the podcast. Okay, so the revelation was that many of us had barriers to all of these amazing upgrades and changes and reformations that happen when we listen to the processes that are happening on the unseen level, that many of us had barriers to those things. So that blew my mind, and let me tell you why. I have been listening to these processes, these various processes now for 6 years, going on 7 years, and I have changed in untold ways. I'm still me. I'm just becoming more me without different negative aspects and belief systems, okay? And these processes have helped me to get there, which is why I keep listening to them. If I've been listening to something for 7 years and it's not doing anything, I wouldn't be doing it. That's crazy, right? It's like working out every single day for 7 years and your body doesn't change. If nothing's happening, you got to find a new workout routine. Okay. So this thing that I am doing every day, listening to different processes, it's like meditating. It's a form of meditation. You can think of it like that. I have been changing because of these things, but I was able to ascertain that I was blocked at a 7 out of 10. If there was a scale from 0 to 10, I was blocked a 7 from these processes actually doing their full job. And my teacher gave us the blessing of removing those barriers. If you had them, not everybody had them. I did. And through this tool that we use, I was able to check after the blessing that I no longer had these barriers. And so I'm sitting here in a state of just complete excitement because I have been changing a lot these last several years, as I said. And now I don't even have the barriers that I didn't know that I had to these processes and these reformations. So now what's it going to be like to listen to these processes? Now what is going to be allowed to seep deeper into my being and my level of awareness and my level of consciousness? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm kind of excited. And I know I don't really go into depth a lot about this stuff so often on the podcast and on these episodes. More so I do in my Patreon community and with the different new and full moon clearings that I do and bonus content and things like this. But this just seems so in the forefront at this exact moment to share. And whether or not you believe what I'm saying and whether or not this is resonating with you on a deep level, the idea is that there's so much that we don't know that could be both working for us and working against us. And this planet is kind of interesting in that way because we incarnate, we choose to incarnate, and we go through this veil and we forget, as I've talked about all the time, we forget that we are souls having a temporary human experience here on lovely planet Earth. We forget that. And in doing so, we also forget all these other things that are part of the unseen world. It's no less real. It's just unseen to us in this level of awareness. And so I guess part of this is, we just had a gratitude episode a few episodes ago. I am so grateful to have found myself with a teacher who can see these things and remove them. And that's something that I never consciously looked for because I didn't even know that I needed that. It just arrived on my path. I mean, it's definitely my path. I'm supposed to be here and doing whatever I'm doing now. But I didn't incarnate remembering any of this. Well, much of it anyway. There are some things I incarnated remembering, but that this was part of it, that there were different karmas and various blocks and stepping stones and obstacles to just moving forward in anyone's given path that we don't see or understand. You know, it's kind of akin to, I guess the thing that's coming in right now is different. I'm trying to put it into different examples to make more sense. It's like if we go through school, formal education, and we learn English, you know, we learn how to read and write, we learn the nouns and the verbs and the adverbs and all the things of putting a sentence together. It's almost as though you learn this whole language and then you realize that there's a whole nother part of the language, like the past tense or something, that just gets added and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that the past tense was part of this. I've only been speaking in present and future. I didn't even know I could speak in the past tense. Or maybe it's like in math when you learn adding, subtracting, and multiplication, and then someday it's like, oh my gosh, there's division. This is a faster way of doing this. I didn't even know we could do this, but look, you can do this. That's kind of how I'm feeling right now. I don't know if that explains it well enough, but I will ask the angels to help me with my metaphors and make them better in the future. Please do that, angels. Please make me better at metaphors so I can get my points across easier. And that's it. I guess that us on this podcast or those listening, we can ask for help. And I say this all the time, you know, ask your angels, ask your ascended masters, ask your guides for help. I maintain that. And maybe an appropriate request would be something to the effect of, masters and angels, I request that you help me to remove any and all barriers and obstacles to, you know, X, Y, Z, whatever you're asking for, that I don't even know exist. Thank you with gratitude and full faith, right? I think that's what I'm getting at, because there are so many obstacles to enlightenment that I'm not even going to be able to go into here. I would have to start a new season and the whole thing would be obstacles to enlightenment part 1 through a million. And that's fine, but we don't need to stay on this topic for forever. But this is coming through right now. So maybe it's coming through because you're listening and you're stuck in some part of your life, or you've been meditating for 20 years and you've gotten to a plateau point. You used to feel that really, really deeply and see all these images or get all this information. And now you're just plateaued and your mind's just racing and you don't know what to do about it. Or maybe you keep finding yourself in the same situation in relationships and you have asked for help before and maybe you've felt a little relief in that area. Or maybe there's these karmas or things blocking you that you have no idea about. And now you can make a request for that. Or maybe it's work, or maybe it's a nutrition issue. Maybe you're not digesting wheat properly and you've done everything on the physical end, but maybe what's blocking you is a karmic thing, or maybe what's blocking you is a barrier that we don't even understand or have words for on this level, on this physical human level. So the idea that there are things out there that we just don't see but are very much affecting us. And of course, you know, number one thing would be if you have a teacher, a master, a guru, a saint, a savior, you know, these words have a lot of emotion behind them. Even saying them for me, some of them are just like, ugh, we don't say that anymore. It doesn't matter what you say, but like if you have some kind of teacher, we'll say teacher, that happens to be one of these benevolent beings that incarnated to help in this area, lucky you. And I've never been one to go around and tell people this person's better than that person or anything. This is your journey. This is your spiritual journey and your path. But if you have one of those incarnated beings in your life and can ask for blessings, or who is able to move things like this for you, that's amazing. And take advantage, because I think they're few and far between, is my experience. There's a lot of fakers out there. There's a lot of charlatans. There's a lot of people who want to be spiritual and try to be spiritual and aren't maybe truly doing the work that they so desperately maybe want to do and hope that they could do. And if you don't have someone like that in your life, then you can still ask your own guides, your own angels. Now that you have maybe this episode is just a little nudge, a little crack in the doorway of being able to have the dispensation yourself to ask for these things to be removed in certain areas of your life. I don't know. It's coming through for a reason. Maybe we all get special dispensation now on some level. Maybe it's a small level, but maybe it'll help. So I'm going to leave it there for today. I am going to do a bonus content clearing for this topic, and we'll ask and request that any of this stuff gets cleared out. You can find that bonus content on patreon.com/letsgetmeta. Any level tier, any level of angel donor will get you that. And thank you again, as always, for being part of this journey and listening in. I really appreciate it. And I hope that you get something out of it as well. Thank you so much for listening. Stay positive, stay safe, and stay meta.
The Let's Get Metaphysical podcast is an Up and Awaken production and is produced and hosted by Renata Maniaci. Our intention is to raise the vibration of the planet by sharing, validating, and normalizing spiritual and metaphysical experiences. If you are ready to raise your vibration, you might enjoy our free Let's Get Meta Master Clearing. To receive the Master Clearing or to learn more about the podcast, visit letsgetmeta.com. We like to share metaphysical stories and answer spiritual questions on the podcast. If you have a metaphysical experience you would like to share or have a spiritual question you would like to have answered, please send an email to info@letsgetmeta.com. The Let's Get Meta podcast is inspired by angels and supported by angels. If you would like to be an angel donor to the podcast, visit patreon.com/letsgetmeta. Thank you for listening. Stay meta.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.